In A Nightmare on Elm Street, a small group of friends are all suffering from the same nightmare, being chased by a burned man with a bladed glove in a boiler room. Little do they know, the man tormenting them is the vengeful spirit of Fred Krueger, a child murderer that had been released on a technicality and was brought to justice by many of the town's parents that burned him alive at his hideout. Now he's killing kids again, but this time he's the master of his own dimension. Will the first entry in the Nightmare series keep you awake? Or is it a sleeper? A total snooze fest, or a nightmare to suffer through? If I were to rate it from A to Z, would it be just a bunch of Z's? Alright, I'm done. Sorry. You fall asleep, you die. It's an excellent premise for a horror movie, having a group of teenage friends being tormented by the ghost of a child murderer. The movie works on several levels, one of which being the fact that it's a fantasy horror. The movie isn't restricted by locations or logic, since much of it takes place in literal dreams. Anything can be explained away by chalking it up to simply being a dream. On another level, the whole premise of needing to stay awake is terrific. There's this total helplessness, and everyone is weakened by not only having insomnia, but, unfortunately, being teenagers. They're powerless. Their parents don't believe them, the cops can't help them, and you can't outrun or hide from a monster that's only apparent weakness is that it has to wait for you to collapse. And eventually, you will. Everyone has to sleep. This is a really tight movie. It's always moving forward, and it pretty much never wastes any time. The movie is constantly explaining the rules to this reality, while also keeping Freddy Krueger mostly a mystery. Most of the information you're given comes from situational revelations and reluctant, drunken confessions from Nancy's mother. The movie, very wisely, never attempts to explain how all of this is happening. It just is. That's all you need to know. The movie also stays really fresh by constantly switching things up. There's a ton of creative and interesting visual effects that are not only fun as all hell, but makes the movie way more exciting. These kids aren't just being stalked and hunted. This is a sick, twisted fantasy. He wants them to run. He wants them to scream. One thing that I love is that most of Nancy's nightmares naturally induce her in a weakened trance towards danger, as if she's just kind of gliding through a dream. I guess she is, but what I really like is that she keeps winding up in the same damn boiler room. You'll watch her repeatedly take a few turns, go down a few steps, and oops, we're back in the boiler room. What might really make or break the movie for a lot of people is Krueger himself. The cocky, disgusting, and predatory antagonist of the movie. Kinda like Chucky, Freddy is loudmouthed and a bit obnoxious, twisting a lot of the potential horror of the movie into the constraints of the personality of its monster. This movie is a blank canvas with a limitless potential for creativity, but none of this works without the world being built and inhabited by its slasher villain. And if you don't like Freddy, it might all be wasted on you. Fortunately, Robert Englund's portrayal of Freddy Krueger is excellent. The character itself is uncomposed, driven by fits of rage or joyful mayhem. The movie doesn't work at all without Freddy, and the movie works very well. It works wonderfully. I think it's pretty easy to find Freddy a bit more obnoxious than scary, but at least this first movie plays it pretty straight. He's bursting with personality, but this isn't a comedy, not yet anyway, and a lot of it is pretty restrained. This might be Freddy's playground, but this is Nancy's story. Her performance is spot on. A strong-willed, sleep-deprived teenager that wants to fight back. All of the characters are actually pretty great, but Nancy kicks ass, and you'll definitely be rooting for her. Now, the final act of the movie is a total intentional mess. It gets completely wacky and overwhelmingly ridiculous. And it becomes a bit difficult to distinguish what's real and what's a dream. Nancy just lost her boyfriend, and she's about to crash. She needs to rise up for one last stand. She calls her dad and tells him to come rescue her in 20 minutes, and that she's going to catch Freddy Krueger in her sleep. Of course, he doesn't believe her and sends an officer to watch the house and alert him if anything alarming happens. So she home alones the house, a project that should take hours, but she pulls it off. She also has a conversation with her mother just before finally tucking herself into bed. Oh, and that didn't take 20 minutes, that took 10 minutes. She falls asleep, seeks out Freddy, pulls him out of the dream, starts raising hell, smashing all the windows, literal explosions going off. And the officer is just standing there like, oh, maybe I should go talk to the dad now. Nancy confronts Freddy a final time. She revokes all of the energy that she's given him, which I guess works. Or it doesn't, because we transition into another fantasy where everything is okay now. But that lasts 5 seconds before Freddy kills everyone at once. I don't know what's going on because it's nonsensical, because it's a dream, which makes total sense, but it doesn't make sense. It's an unhappy, helpless, sequel bait ending, but it does feel like 3 different endings kind of strung together. And it'll leave you wondering what was even real and what wasn't. Well, the movie works, it's just the last act basically turns it into a slapstick comedy. And, whatever. I don't care. It manages to juggle all of these unique and fascinating aspects into a mostly delightful experience. It's fresh, it's fun, it's exciting, and it's just wild. Its influence and popularity is undeniable, and watching it, it's hard to find very much to dislike. It's a horror triumph. Now, even as a kid, I thought Freddy was a bit much. And I was always largely unaffected by watching this. At least in any negative way. My takeaway has always been that the inventiveness and the wit is the biggest strength to the franchise. Either with the help of Freddy or despite Freddy, it's easy to appreciate A Nightmare on Elm Street. And if you don't really like the movie, you have to at least be thankful it was made. Or else we wouldn't have New Line Cinema. Without Freddy, we wouldn't have The Lord of the Rings as we know it. We wouldn't have David Fincher's Seven as we know it. And most tragically, without Freddy, we wouldn't have the log bounce scene from Final Destination 2.